Welcome back, everybody. We had a listener send in an interview with Raghuram Rajan, and it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, I was fascinated by this one.
It's in the Indian Express from December 22nd, so just a few days ago.
Yeah, hot off the press.
And, Rajan's the former RBI governor,
Right.
so he's got a lot of insights, I think, into India's economy and where things are going. And this interview really dives into his take on India's economic future and what it'll take to reach that, goal of becoming a developed country.
Viksit Bharat by 2047.
Exactly.
It's a big, ambitious goal.
Huge. Yeah. And you know what struck me right away is that Rajan seems pretty skeptical.
Yeah, he doesn't mince words.
No, he doesn't pull any punches. He doesn't think India's on track to meet this goal, at least not without some pretty major changes.
Yeah, some serious course correction.
So let's dig into that. What are those changes? Where does he see the biggest roadblocks?
Well, he starts with GDP growth. India is currently growing at about 6%.
Which sounds pretty good on the surface.
Right, it's impressive. But Rajan argues that to really achieve Viksit Bharat status, India needs to fully utilize its population dividend.
The population dividend.
Yeah, essentially it's this surge of young people entering the workforce. And to really capitalize on that, Rajan believes India needs a growth rate significantly higher than 6%.
I see. So it's not just about growth, it's about the pace of growth.
Exactly. And he actually points out that pre-COVID growth was less than 4%,
Oh, wow.
which he describes as a terrible situation if India were to return to that.
Makes sense. You need robust growth to create enough opportunities for a young and expanding workforce.
Right. It's about creating jobs matching the growth to the population.
And speaking of jobs, Rajan seems particularly concerned about the job market.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He sees a real mismatch between where jobs are being created and where they're needed.
Like, what's he seeing?
Well, manufacturing, for example.
Yeah.
Traditionally a driver of growth is becoming more automated.
So fewer jobs for people.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
While some jobs are being created in construction, driven by infrastructure spending, there's also this worrying trend of people moving back into agriculture.
That's interesting because shouldn't people be moving out of agriculture into higher paying sectors like services and manufacturing?
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
Rajan emphasizes the need for higher quality jobs, and he really questions why the agricultural sector is attracting workers instead of repelling them.
It's almost like we're going backwards in a way.
It's a puzzle, for sure, and it kind of ties into another key point. He makes the challenge of government spending.
Yeah, I know he's been critical of political parties promising all these government handouts or doles.
Right, and his argument is that while some targeted aid for the poorest is absolutely necessary, excessive spending on these doles actually diverts resources from crucial investments.
Like where?
Well, education, healthcare, and infrastructure, the very things that drive long-term growth and create those higher quality jobs.
it's trade.
Exactly, and he sees this as a really short-sighted approach that could actually hinder India's progress toward Viksit Bharat.
So instead of just giving handouts, he's advocating for investments that empower people to improve their lives and contribute to the economy more sustainably.
Precisely. It's about investing in people's potential rather than just providing temporary relief.
And this leads to another interesting point. There's been a lot of talk lately about encouraging Indians to have more children to boost the economy.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
I was curious about what Rajan had to say about that.
Well, he actually offers a different perspective.
Which is?
He acknowledges the concern about a shrinking workforce, but he suggests a different solution, encouraging internal migration.
Like making it easier for people to move within India.
Exactly, for better opportunities.
And he thinks that would help maintain a youthful workforce.
Yeah, and also boost economic balance across different regions.
Yeah.
It's like a different kind of population boost focused on mobility and opportunity rather than just sheer numbers.
So it's not about how many people you have, but how effectively it can contribute.
Right, it's about maximizing the potential of your existing population.
He even compares it to immigration in the U.S.
Yeah, how that's helped keep the U.S. economy so dynamic.
Interesting. So it's really about harnessing the potential of the existing population through strategic policies rather than just focusing on birth rates.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the importance of mobility and skill development as key factors in that equation.
This is all really thought-provoking stuff. It seems like Rajan is calling for a more nuanced approach to population and workforce planning.
Definitely, he's challenging some conventional wisdom there.
But what about policies that directly affect businesses? Does he have any thoughts on the goods and services tax, or GST?
He does. He's a big proponent of stable and predictable GST rates.
Makes sense.
He thinks, businesses need that kind of stability to really focus on growth and innovation.
Yeah, instead of constantly trying to adjust to new tax regime.
Yeah, it's about creating a predictable environment for businesses to thrive.
And then there's the whole issue of this looming trade war with President Trump getting reelected.
Right, that's a big one.
I mean, that has to be a concern for India, right?
It is, and Rajan acknowledges the potential impact, even if, you know, India isn't directly targeted.
Because it's mainly aimed at China, right?
Right. But he points out that even though the trade war would primarily impact manufacturing, India's service sector might not be completely immune.
I see. So there could be some spillover effects.
Yeah, and then there's the issue of Chinese goods being blocked from the U.S.
Where do they go?
Well, they could flood other markets, and that could create indirect pressure on India.
So even if we're not the primary target, we could still get caught in the crossfire.
Exactly. It really highlights how interconnected the global economy is, you know.
What happens in one part of the world can have ripple effects everywhere else.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to another area where global forces come into play, the Indian rupee.
Right.
It seems like there's always this debate about whether it's strong enough.
Yeah, it's a perennial topic.
What's Rajan's take on that?
Well, this is where his background as a former central banker really shines through.
Okay, how so?
He suggests shifting the focus away from the rupee's exchange rate and putting it squarely on controlling inflation.
Interesting.
He argues that if you keep inflation in check, the exchange rate will naturally stabilize.
So it's about focusing on the underlying economic fundamentals,
Precisely, get those right, and a lot of other things tend to fall into place.
rather than trying to manipulate the currency.
Right, it's a more sustainable approach in the long run.
It sounds like overall, Rajan is advocating for a long-term view.
Definitely not about quick fixes.
Looking at the big picture, and that includes India's role in the global economy.
Right, and speaking of that, he suggests that India's comparative advantage might actually lie in high-skill services.
So instead of trying to compete with countries like China on low-cost manufacturing,
He sees India excelling in a different arena.
like software development, things like that.
Exactly. Financial
Yeah.
services, healthcare technology, even creative industries like film and design.
Those are all areas where India is already making a mark.
And Rajan believes that by continuing to invest in education and skills development, India can really become a global leader in those fields.
So it's about playing to our strengths.
Right, and finding our unique niche in the global economy.
I like that idea, instead of trying to be everything to everyone.
Focus on what we do best.
So in Rajan's view, India's path to Viksit Bharat lies in leveraging its strengths and really carving out that unique space.
Yeah, it's a compelling vision. And he doesn't shy away from the challenges, but he also sees immense potential for India.
This interview has been a real eye-opener.
It's given us a lot to think about in terms of India's economic future,
Rajan's really laid out a nuanced picture.
highlighting both the potential and the challenges.
And I think what resonates most with me is his emphasis on investing in people.
That's how India can truly achieve Viksit Bharat.
It's not just about GDP numbers.
It's about creating opportunities for everyone.
Yeah, it's about making sure that growth actually translates into a better quality of life for all Indians.
Right, exactly. It's not just about reaching some arbitrary economic milestone.
It's about making sure everybody benefits.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us back to your original question, about what it will take for India to really become a developed country by 2047.
Yeah, Rajan seems to think that focusing on these high-skill services might be a big part of it.
He sees it as India's, comparative advantage instead of trying to be the next manufacturing superpower.
Right.
He thinks India should really leverage its existing strengths in areas like tech and finance.
So things like software development, fintech,
Yeah.
even maybe like AI and data analytics.
Exactly. Those are all sectors where India already has a strong foundation.
Yeah, and a talented workforce.
Right. And Rajan argues that with, continued investment in education skills development, India could really become a global leader in those fields.
It's a really compelling vision for sure.
It is.
It's about playing to India's strengths and really carving out that unique space in the global economy.
And it's about investing in people.
At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Rajan's message is that economic growth is only meaningful if it benefits everyone.
If it lifts everybody up.
Exactly. It means creating opportunities for all Indians to participate in and benefit from the country's success.
Well, this has been a fantastic discussion.
Yeah, Rajan's given us a lot to chew on.
He's really painted a nuanced picture of India's economic landscape. And, I think his insights are a valuable reminder that achieving Viksit Bharat is not just about hitting those economic
It's
targets,
about creating a more inclusive and equitable society.
where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Exactly. And on that note, we would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Rajan's ideas? What specific areas within the service sector do you think India could really dominate on a global stage? Share your thoughts with us, and maybe it'll spark our next deep dive. Thanks for joining us.